Good evening and welcome to what we're affectionately calling the State of the Jews webinar. It's Rabbi Jason Rubenstein, the director, and we are going to get started in just 1 minute. We'll give people a second in case they're still logging on. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. It's a joy and an honor to have you all here tonight as we begin a new year. The bulk of the class of 2029 just arrived on campus yesterday, and our community is looking forward with hope and with some trepidation and a lot of questions about what the coming year holds, about the state of Jewish life at Harvard, antisemitism, interfaith connections, free speech, and so many other critical questions. And we are here to answer all of those, or begin to answer them, and perhaps most importantly, actually, to communicate how you all of us together, can continue to come close together as a community, to be informed, to be cohesive, to be effective, and also to be a community of kindness and integrity. And I'm joined by two of the best people in the world to share this perspective, and two incredible people to work with. So I want to give them each a minute to introduce themselves. So first, Rabbi Elisha Gechter, who's our Senior Director of Community Engagement.
Hi, everybody. It's good to be together tonight. I'm just marking around 6 months in this role at Harvard Hillel. It's an exciting time to be doing this work with a full staff, finally, in our building, welcoming students back, getting to hear from alumni about the things that are really on their minds. And my 10 plus years at the Harvard Kennedy School in many ways has prepared me for a lot of these conversations, but being in this role also gives me a much broader perspective that I've appreciated getting to work with. I'm going to pass it over to Amelia.
Hello, my name is Amelia Heller, and I'm a junior now at the college studying economics. And I'm also the current undergraduate president of Harvard Hillel. And I'm very excited to be here with you all tonight. And thank you so much for taking the time and really caring about the Jewish people at Harvard and this institution as much as we do.
Great. So as we get started, I want to actually share a moment. It's a video of something that happened just a couple months ago, the last life cycle event of our community, which was commencement. We celebrated really as an entire Jewish community. And there's a little video of that event, which has some sweetness to it, has some celebration to it. And we wanted to share it, first of all, because I think it gives a sense, it reaches down to what this means, what it means to be welcoming members of the community, where they're headed. It also shows you really a type of strength, a type of celebration, a type of hopefulness that you don't always see, certainly don't get a sense of from the headlines. So Elisha, if you could run that tape for us.
Got it.
Class of 2025, and parents, significant others, siblings, a huge mazal tov on your accomplishments here. And I just want to say what a joy it is to be the Jewish community gathered here with Chabad, with the Hillel staff. What a time you've been through in college, right? That there was exertion, right? Your 4 years here of friendships, of learning, of achievements, sometimes of conflict with the people around you, with the culture around you. The thing that's hardest to explain to the outside world, but so palpable when you're here in this courtyard right now, when you're at a Shabbat dinner, when you read the op-ed pages of the Crimson, is what a strong community we are, and what strong people you are. There's a sense of indomitable courage, but also commitment to truth and intellectual capacity that you all have displayed here, you all have used to create so many things. The very first Masechet, the very first section of Talmud, ends, and it thinks about how to move forward through an ending like this, and it offers a blessing. It's a blessing really for each of you. Yalchu bechayil el chayil. May you go from strength to strength. The image of going from strength to strength, the strength that you've displayed over these 4 years, and to what's going to come next over the many decades, is the thing that fills all of us here with so much hope and excitement. know that you are not ending, you're really entering into a community here, which is stronger and more loving and interconnected than I think you can even imagine at this stage. Please raise a glass to the class of 2025. Let's say a huge l'chaim and mazal tov to each one of you and all of you. Keep building this community and making it yet more amazing through your presence and contributions. Thank you.
That's who we are. That's what we are. And there's a sense of each of us is a journey, is a wave, a crest of a wave that's traveling through time together. And there's really a deep concern, which has united our community, which is a large part of actually why I decided to return after 20 years away out in the world to serve and lead this community. And I want to just highlight how unsettling, how unnerving, and in some sense, how disappointing the state of Harvard has been for our community in myriad ways that were maybe palpable to some, maybe people had a sense, but I think it really erupted post October 7 and have been politicized and polarized in some really unfortunate ways in the intervening months. And we're here to talk about all of that tonight. We're basically going to divide this call into three major sections. The first two, which are the larger, first is really about anti-Semitism, the state of the advocacy in the university, and we'll spend about 20, 25 minutes on that. That'll be Elisha and I taking the lead. The second part is the part that actually is closer to my heart, and I hope will make the case should be closer to yours also, which is the state of Jewish life on campus and what we're doing proactively, what really rests within our power and our responsibility to shape, and what it's like to be an undergraduate. Amelia will really speak to that. And Elisha will speak more broadly to our work with faculty, with Israelis throughout the campus, with graduate and professional students, and to give you a flavor of what it can be to be Jewish, what it is to be Jewish right now in ways that aren't shaped by others, but are shaped and of our own choosing. And then the very last part, we'll wrap up with a set of calls to action, of ways to be involved, ways to contribute, which were some of the most moving and well-placed questions from you all. And so those three segments, an assessment of anti-Semitism and the kind of broad framing parameters of Jewish life, more specifically then moving to our community, what we're creating, what we're offering day in and day out, week in and week out for students, and then finally how everyone here can contribute over the coming 12 months. So jumping into segment one, the state of anti-Semitism and advocacy. And we want to do this in two segments. I'm going to speak for about 10 minutes about where we were a year ago and where we've come to in the past 12 months. And then I'll hand it over to Elisha, who will speak about what we're doing from here going forward. And I want to just highlight that a year ago, there was tremendous uncertainty. President Garber was still an interim president. The direction of Harvard was very, very uncertain. The fate and future of Harvard were still uncertain, and in some sense, they still are in important ways, but those are coming much more from without than from within the university. And so I want to describe a kind of broad direction and then some specific instances of that to clarify it, of the path we've chosen as an institution and the path Harvard has chosen institution. And those are very, very profoundly interconnected at this moment. So I want to begin with a framing of the problem we're encountering here. We saw really erupt into the focus, really come to dominate the campus immediately after October 7. And the thing that I'm going to describe is that this unintuitively, I think, for the Jewish community is not primarily and not exclusively a problem of anti-Semitism. And what I mean by that is if you talk to certain professors, there's a professor I'm very close with who has appointments both in the hard sciences and in the humanities. And he described actually a kind of a dysfunctional dynamic, a dysfunctional way of dealing with conflict and difference, a kind of illiberalism that had taken root in certain humanities programs that he was aware of. And he described every year there was a different conflict. Some years it would be about George Floyd, or it'd be certain ethical concerns about a certain professor. And the 2023 iteration was October 7 in Israel concerns, and the sense of this illiberalism as the core problem has been our formulation. And the thing that is, again, unintuitive, but I think very clarifying once you come to terms with it, is that a kind of rigid and even dogmatic anti-Zionism has been a stable part of the left since at least the time of Lenin, through the 1960s, when it was the Soviet ambassador to the UN who was the first human being to utter the word Zionism is racism, and through and through and through. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because I think the core phenomenon that we have encountered, that we've observed, is over the course of a generation, give or take, Harvard falling away from its classic and urgent and noble pursuit of truth, pursuit of excellence, following the facts, even and especially when they're inconvenient for your theories, being curious when you hear someone state an opinion that you think is wrong and saying, well, I'm going to beat you badly in an argument unless you can convince me of something. And that kind of ethos being replaced by a certain desire to create a conformity in one's social circle, of being threatened by ideas that are different, needing to actually exclude and shun them. That is a force that's rising broadly in our society, it's very sadly. And Harvard has not made itself the bastion against that it can be and needs to be. And that formulation has really been the core of what we have articulated. And this is probably even more important, the core of President Garber's strategy and formulation. So he gave a call earlier this year to some of the major donors to the university, where he said it was precisely an illiberalism within the university that had been his kind of target, or the site of his reforms that he's undertaken. And that's taken the form of changes in the leadership of the Center for Middle Eastern Studies. It's taken the form of the Graduate School of Education recently insisting that a certain journal edition, which was about Gaza, could not be published because 9 of the 12 pieces contained in it were not works of scholarship at all, but merely opinion pieces with no new research or analysis. It's taken the form of renaming some of the diversity efforts. It's taken the form including of making sure that Hillel's security is provided for the Jewish students while they're eating on the college, and when they're eating in the meal plan in the Hillel dining hall are provided for. And I think it's really been a very consistent and in some sense frustratingly slow process. But I want to frame for a moment the scale and the pace of change that we're seeing. And I want to take 2 examples. The first is the Anti-Semitism Task Force report, which was voluminous, clocking in at a little over 300 pages, and came out this spring. And people were frustrated, and understandably so, at the kind of what kept being delays and delays and delays. Originally, it was supposed to come out in September. And on the one hand, that's right, and we should always push for things to be speedier. And Harvard produced a new book. I mean, specifically, professors Derek Penslar and Jared Elias produced an original book of scholarly research in a year, which is unheard of in academic circles. And they produced the deepest and broadest and most insightful and most incisive report that higher education has produced, reflecting on itself. And in some ways, the report from Harvard provides a template for the future of universities. The second example I want to share, which is really a little bit more specific and will lead into the kind of broader formulations, is in that report, you read about a student from the Graduate School of Education, and it's a really chilling pattern of discrimination that he experienced. And not only was he, as an Israeli, excluded from social circles merely for being Israeli by people who had never asked his question about his politics or his moral commitments, he actually eventually had to stop going to campus because his friends, if they were seen speaking with him in the hallways of the library, would themselves then be excluded by others from group chats and group projects. And he filed a Title VI complaint, and this is unconscionable. And we should be outraged if this happens to anyone, including amongst our own community. And the Jewish community, are not the only ones who are outrageous. And he filed a Title VI complaint. And that Title VI complaint actually did not go in his favor. The findings and the process was perhaps not well handled. So there was insufficient evidence for harassment, which is extremely troubling, because if this is not a violation of Title VI, which means it stipulates at its core that every person needs to have full access to an educational experience with no discrimination based on national or ethnic origin. This is as clear-cut a case of a Title VI discrimination as you could really ask for. And the response of the Harvard Central Administration largely to the mishandling of this specific investigation was to move the Title VI adjudication out of what had been formerly known as the DEI office and directly under the provost, and to unite it with the group that was doing Title IX investigations. And really importantly, Harvard has an excellent lawyer who's in charge of these things. So when she was brought in about a decade ago to lead the Title IX efforts, Harvard had really kind of abysmal Title IX gender discrimination stats relative to peers. And Ms. Murhill designed a curriculum, and Harvard became actually the first school to do Know Your Rights and bystander trainings, not just for students, but for faculty and staff. And over the course of a few years, actually came to excel in every metric you could ask for. And she was tasked with implementing a similar playbook vis-a-vis Title VI and anti-Semitism in the years to come. And the reason I'm telling you this story is it doesn't end particularly well for this one student, although his standing up and speaking out on behalf of himself and our community, and he was very courageous. He said, I'm doing this primarily so this will never happen again. And his efforts, even though they didn't change much for him, pushed for the university forward because we had some excellent and dedicated partners within the administration, and actually very broad support among many of the senior deans and vice presidents, and most centrally and most importantly from President Garber and his staff. And I want to give you this picture that Harvard is taking the kinds of steps that we want it to, by and large. And you will note that I have not said the word Trump yet in this formulation. We can speak a little bit more about that later, but I really want to frame that there is an internal work going on, which is really animated by President Garber and his vision of what the university needs to be, his disappointments at some of the ways it has grown or fallen over our lifetimes, and his commitment, his resolve to writing that for Jewish students and faculty and for the university writ large. And the image I want to leave you with before we kind of stop as of August 27, 2025 and look to the future is one of a kind of course correction, in the sense that if you have a ship that's traveling and you start to turn it at 5 degrees a year, after the first year, it's only going 5 degrees different. And the distance between where it would have been on its previous trajectory and its new trajectory is very small. And will only grow slowly. But if you can actually turn it then another 5 degrees the next year, and then another 5 and another 5, before too long, you're headed in a very different direction. And the reason I'm saying that is because the route of advocacy, of supporting the Harvard administration when it needs to be supported, criticizing it when it needs to be criticized, and hewing to a picture that we are not asking for exceptions for the Jewish community. We're actually asking only for a fair and courageous, when necessary, interpretation, application, and implementation of Harvard's core values when they apply to us, against the forces of liberalism that are both outside the university gates and within, has shown remarkable results in just 12 months of work since I began. Elisha began even more recently. And there's a sense, I think, that when you are in the day-to-day or when you're not as connected to the university, it's actually hard to see those signs of progress. And so I want to actually just share that the place we're in, the error bars about the direction Harvard is going, are vastly smaller. The direction, I think, is very near the upper end of what we could have hoped for in the kind of cone of possibilities a year ago. And this does not mean we're where we should be. We're only a small distance from where we would have been. And the application of a similar amount and type of focus and energy is going to be required for a number of years on behalf of our community and the Hillel staff and the central administration of Harvard. But I wanted to share this just by way of saying you should simultaneously be dissatisfied by some of the things that are happening around campus, and also given a significant measure of not just hope, but confidence in our ability as a community to advocate effectively. And we'll share a little bit towards the end of the call about how you can contribute to that effort in the coming year. But first, I actually want to detail some of the concrete steps that we're planning over the coming year. And so, Elisha, I'm going to spotlight you and hand things over to you.
Okay, thank you. Well, Jason gave Amelia and I a shout out at the beginning, and I actually want to start out what I'm going to share with a shout out to Rabbi Jason, because he's an excellent person to work for and work with in this moment. Not only does he have a full understanding of the college from his own experience here, He's really gained the trust of so many stakeholders in our community, from our alumni to our administration, and we're able to work so well together because of that. And because he brings not only the hope that he just shared with you, but also the focus that he just shared with you. And I think that's one of the things that we really hope continues after this call. And maybe there are some more people with us on that, to stay focused, to stay hopeful, to stay proactive. So the things that I'm going to share with you were really developed in concert with students, with alumni, with our staff, with other colleagues in the local and the national Jewish community, in terms of learning the lessons that Jason was illuminating just now, and thinking about really effective ways to move forward. And so we have a number of different prongs that we are going to focus on in our strategy over the coming year. That's very much around addressing anti-Semitism, but also addressing how to make this campus the best place for Jewish life to flourish in this learning environment, which we know that it is flourishing right now, and that it can do even more so. And so that's really the work that we're all up to. And the first piece is that our work with national organizations and local Jewish organizations have been very fruitful. There have been a lot of partnerships that have helped us to deliver the work, to think about our strategy, and we're going to continue that. I'm part of a cohort through Hillel International, of other people on campuses, 13 campuses across the United States, that are focused on this issue of working through anti-Semitism in partnership with university administration and other partners. And I learn from that cohort on a daily basis. We share best practices with each other. And some of the work that we're going to be doing is shaped by being in continual conversation with that group. CJP, Project Shema, others have been really valuable partners, where we learn from them and they also learn from us, because we can share a lot about what's going on the ground, on campus, which feeds back into the thinking that they do, the work that they are willing to support, and the ways that we can roll that out on campus. So those partnerships are incredibly important for us, that they continue to be two-way streets of learning and of implementation. We are also working incredibly closely with the administration at Harvard, which is an enormous body of people. There's a lot of relationship development that has already been happening and will continue to do. And there's turnover at our Hillel and at other places at the university. And so there's new relationships to be igniting and to be developing. We have a wonderful new Title VI coordinator on campus who is in partnership with us now, and her team is coming to do a training soon with our team at Hillel about what is the process that a student or any member of our community would go through when they start a Title VI reporting, and how can we be supportive, and how can there be a little bit more transparency in that process. So there's a lot to do, not only in the one-on-one relationships, but also the bigger learning that can come out of it for our staff and our students as well. I alluded to some training, but continue to say that that's another place that our partnerships have really come into play, and we'll continue to call on for this next academic year to think about what are the trainings that need to happen so that the broadest range of people who interact with each other on our campus can understand what some of the issues are at play when it comes to Jewish identity, anti-Semitism, inclusion. And so that's a really important area where we, in our relationships with the administration, are really thinking through what has gone well so far in terms of training, and where are there still a lot of inroads to make, and who are the right people to deliver the right content in partnership with us, so that we can really be thoughtful about our way forward in our strategy. We're also thinking much more strategically and proactively about how we work with faculty. First of all, to make sure that faculty feel like a supported community in and of themselves, and that they have access to the kind of celebration and joyful Jewish experience that we are providing all the time for our students. And we're standing up a faculty advisory committee for the first time, so that they can help us think through those pieces, and also how they can be supportive of students, not only face-to-face with students, but also when they're in their own chambers where staff and students do not have access to, where they can be really advocates for our students and for Jewish life on campus. Our alumni are one of our best resources at Hillel, at the university, and they deeply care about you. So many of you are on this call. We know that you deeply care and you want to be in partnership with us. And we care about that very much as well. You are our best advocates out there to keep this university focused on the right path forward. And so that is another very big part of our strategy, is continuing to engage with alumni. And we'll have a few calls to action around the ways that those of you who are on this call can do so. I'm one of your main point people and really want to think together with you about the pieces that we are rolling out and how we can strengthen those as well. Additionally, I have an amazing body of chaplains across the university. Rabbi Getzel Davis, who was doing some of the work with community engagement before I got here, is now in a really crucial role at the university doing interfaith work. And he considers Hillel one of his key partners in that work. And we are sharing information through his office with those across campus who know how to support students in their religious journeys, who are coming with particular identities that we understand. And the chaplains and the interfaith work are going to be real partners of ours, have been, and will continue to be even more so. So those are a few of the pieces that will really shape the way that we are relationship building, making differences, bringing the right education onto campus. And I want to end with one other piece that is soon to come out a little bit later in the fall. We are working on a website that will be a central location for internal and external stakeholders to come and see what is the history of anti-Semitism and Jewish life on campus. What are the recommendations that came out of the report, and what are the steps that have been taken and that need to continue to be taken? So it's a place where we can really hold our university and each other accountable for moving forward, and to do so in a really transparent and communal kind of a way, which is something that we'll be sharing with you later in the fall. And with that, I'm going to turn things over back to Jason to keep us going.
So thank you, Elisha, for that, and the shout out and all the work we're doing. One of the things I want to really frame is that positions like Elisha's, the idea of really working strategically across the university administration, of gathering alumni to carry out that advocacy, is something new for the Jewish community. It's not how Hillel's or other Jewish organizations built on campuses were designed. And we've really worked very rapidly to adjust to the reality we've seen, and kind of taken on the advocacy for and the securing of the kind of basic and strategic interests of the Jewish community, which include questions of admissions, which I saw in some of the pre-submitted questions. I will just share the kind of anecdata that we have are that the number of admitted Jewish students, including from day schools, which are the easiest to tell, the Jewish high schools, is strong this year, and stronger than it has been in several years, which we're hopeful for in terms of the health of our community and its future here. And is, we don't have the internal minutes of the Harvard admissions meeting, so we can't speak to anything particular. But I do just want to frame that's a major issue for many of you on this call. It's an existential question for our community, and there are some hopeful signs that are actually exactly the signs we would hope for. Now, I'll just answer live here a question which we received, which I appreciate a lot. So I'll hit the answer live button, and it was about saying yes, anti-Semitism is important, but what about mental health? What about students' search for meaning? What about the search for purpose? And yes, I could not agree more emphatically. And it's a little bit, you might analogize this to a country, right, where you have to defend your borders, you have to have security. And then there's a question of the quality of life that happens inside, right? You can't just say, oh, we've played a successful defense, let's go home. You actually then have to attend to the welfare and flourishing and needs of everyone, which the defense is also in the service of. And one of the primary things we do, actually, I want to just say this explicitly, is not be consumed in our work, in our thinking, by what occurs outside the Jewish community and by these questions of advocacy, but actually to always be oriented towards purpose, towards Jewish flourishing, and towards the fact that there are Jewish students who are shaping their identities, who are exploring Judaism, who are taking on leadership, as Amelia is, you'll hear about in just a moment, throughout the university. And our highest calling, really a sacred duty, is to support them, to inspire them, to connect them to the richness of the Jewish tradition and one another, and to help them begin their journey of authoring the next chapter of this 100-generation-long tradition we're blessed to inherit. And one of the ways I put this, this is actually in some ways the core intuition of Zionism itself, right? If we as a community allow 25 protesters in Harvard Yard and 5 administrators who are deciding whether or not to discipline them, if we allow those 30 people to be the most important people in the Jewish community, we've taken a very wrong turn. We ultimately need to take responsibility for our own welfare and our own flourishing, and to focus less on what others do and more on what we can and must do with and for one another. And that's really the ethos that you'll feel when you walk into the Hillel building. It was on display yesterday as the new first years arrived. And I'm just so grateful to Amelia for the partnership we have, for her leadership of the student board and the whole undergraduate community. And thank you for being here tonight to help communicate what you are, who you are, and what it's like to be Jewish, and what you dream of it being like to be Jewish here to this group of people who's on. So I'm going to hand it over to you and share it all with us. We want to hear everything.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing kind of where we came from and where we're headed. I'd like to take a moment and talk about, more the student side. Elisha and Jason talked about, the national level, the university level, even the college level. I want to talk specifically about our community and about our people. This year, we're coming back from summer break fully staffed, which is really amazing. Jason mentioned yesterday, we had an event to welcome new first years and their families. And really, Hillel was just alive in a way that was, energized me. And it was beautiful just to welcome in all of the new people. And I also want to talk about some of the things that kind of happened at Hillel over the summer, which sometimes get skipped over because, we're all away from school, we forget about it. But we had many travel opportunities, including a trip to Hungary, Poland, and we ran a birthright trip for the first time in, I believe, 3 years. We ran a birthright trip. And actually, I was in Israel too during the war with Iran. And after, of course, the first people to reach out to me were my family, but the second people to reach out were the Hillel staff members, asking if there was anything I could do, or if anything they could do for me, if I needed help, if I needed meals, if I needed help getting out. And I think that really speaks to the level of care and community that we build at Harvard Hillel, that they're kind of like a second family. They're always there to care for the community, but also for the individuals, and meet us at whatever our expressions of Jewish life are. And we kind of build a bunch of different communities within our big Hillel ecosystem. We have a flourishing Reform minyan, an egalitarian minyan, and an Orthodox minyan. And we all pray in our separate rooms, but then we come together for Shabbat dinner. And we have plenty of events too, where we put aside our differences and we just have bagels, which is bagel brunch every Sunday morning. And I love sitting at the front and, greeting everyone. And it's really just so energizing to see all the beautiful faces of people who are coming into Hillel, whether it's their first time or if they're there for every meal. It's really great just being in that space and seeing everyone. And just going back to what Jason said about not being consumed by antisemitism, and instead focusing on the Jewish joy. You can focus on all the turmoil going on in our community and at Harvard and in our nation, or you could focus on the good things. And I think something that Hillel is really trying to do is build up that Jewish joy in a time where sometimes it feels like even leaving your dorm might be just really like something very heavy. Something we did last semester to kind of build Jewish joy is we held the first ever Jewish formal. All of the houses at Harvard will host their own formal for their students. So we figured it was only fitting for Hillel to host one for the Jewish students. And it was really just an amazing night. And I hope it's a tradition we can continue in the years to come. And I think just focusing on things that bring students joy, and really helping student leaders actualize their dreams. So when I became president of Harvard Hillel, that was something I knew I wanted to do. I wanted to have a Jewish formal. And then 3 months later, we made it happen. And I think that that's really the story of Jewish leadership and Jewish resilience at Harvard. I'm a current junior, so that means my freshman year was October 7th, and everything since then has kind of been, I wouldn't say muddied, but kind of in the shadow of that. And I think Hillel, counterintuitively, is the place where I can come out of that shadow, and really experience Jewish joy in all in all meanings. And I think also we do balance the fun social programming of bagel brunch, of Jewish formal, of welcome parties and things like that. But we also have many activities for introspection, for learning, and for personal and spiritual growth. One of my favorites was the Jewish Learning Fellowship, which I did my freshman year. And we've done every year since I don't know when, but it was actually a weekly Torah study that we did as a group of 15 freshmen. And that's actually where I met my blockmates, my roommates at Harvard. I live with them still 2 years later. And it's really beautiful that Hillel brought me both that connection to Torah and to our tradition, and introduced me to these people who 2 years down the line I'm still living with. And I'm anxiously awaiting for them to get back to campus. And I think it's really special that Hillel serves both those two sides of the social, emotional needs of students, but also the intellectual yearning and intellectual curiosity that Harvard students, that's why we love Harvard, is that kind of intellectual curiosity. And Hillel really has ways to help students hone their abilities of dialogue and learning. Another one of my favorite opportunities that is one of our newer initiatives, but is going strong, is our Jewish Christian Bible study, where we study, Jewish sources, but we have Christian students from all walks of campus. We have Catholics, Protestants, Baptists, and we all sit and discuss the Tanakh. And it's very interesting to, look at these texts that I've known for my whole life from a new perspective. And that's, again, something where a student came to Harvard Hillel's leadership and they said, okay, let's do it. And I think that that just speaks to the amazing student leaders, but also to the staff and the support that they've been giving us over the past few years, and that I know will continue long after I graduate. And I really appreciate just all that the staff has done for us. And I think, if any of you want to come visit Harvard Hillel, when you walk into the building, you'll really feel that energy of the communities that we try to build across all kinds of Jews on campus. And we really look out for each other. So yeah, I'll hand it off back to Jason to close us out.
Okay. So what's hard to really grasp, is I'll share the spotlight here for a minute, is how what Amelia just described is one slice, and if you were to, and it's descriptive and it's accurate, and that you would get a different picture from so many different students, and that's part of what's really wonderful. And the thing I always want you to kind of think about and remember back to is that Harvard students, yes, they arrive with needs, they need friends, they need meaning, and they also arrive with real ambitions and are searching out for where will they find generous and wise mentors, where will they find a field of action that will be meaningful, that will allow them to make a change in the world, will introduce them to amazing people. And the ethos of empowerment and of mentorship is in inviting students into, as we describe it, apprenticing in the craft of creating a community of meaning with and for one another in the Jewish tradition, is the heart and soul of what our staff do. And one of the pictures of that is leadership positions like the one Amelia occupies, which are as compelling, as demanding, put as many resources at your fingertips as anything else on campus, in the sense that there's a way to build to actually appeal to the very best instincts of students and their highest aspirations, which is something we're really profoundly committed to. And I'll even share some of the images that inspire that in a minute. But first, I do want to now go back to Rabbi Elisha in a different vein, which is about what Amelia just described for the undergraduates, really broadening that ethos to the other schools and elements of Jewish life on campus beyond.
Yeah. Amelia, I was like really smiling the whole time you were describing, your experience and your leadership, because I've seen it up close and I'm totally inspired by it. And similarly, at the very start of this call, when we played that video from graduation, I couldn't stop smiling to see the faces of so many of the students that I know well, that I've worked with, who are grad students, who are Israelis, who got themselves through their programs and are now going out and doing great things in the world, and really used each other as a community of support and used Hillel as a community of support during their time on campus. And we want to make that even stronger. And we are really putting resources now towards supporting grad students, particularly. Something we heard a lot from them is that they're not always going to come to Hillel because it's not as central to their campuses. And so we are thinking deeply about, how do we support the student leaders who are on those campuses? And how do we also show up for them more on their campuses? How do we make sure that we're sponsoring continuing lunches that have been happening at the Longwood campus, and being there ourselves as staff to say, we're here, we're listening, we hear you, we're in partnership with you. And how do we do that? And not just Longwood, but so many of our campuses, HLS, HCAS, HBS, and the others. And we really have a strategy this year with a number of our staff focusing on that, supporting the leadership and doing some really particular programming that they have told us will add value to their campus and will make them feel the support of Hillel and the Jewish community. And particularly, those grad students do not necessarily always engage across the schools with each other. And we are doing some home-hosted Shabbat dinners this year in the homes of some of our local alumni. Some of you have been asking about alumni. I'm going to speak a little bit more to that in a moment. So that they can sit and have a meaningful Shabbat conversation with people from other schools where they're having this similar shared experience in different parts of our campus as graduate students. Israelis are also another group of people whose smiling faces were on that video, and that we want to make sure that they really understand that Hillel is a space for them to come in, not just to all of our programs, but also to come into some programs that are really tailored just for them. We're starting the year off with a Rosh Hashanah dinner that's just for Israelis and their families, and we'll continue to have some gatherings, even jointly with some of the Israeli graduate students at MIT. And that's because Israelis are having a different kind of experience oftentimes on campus. And we want to make sure that they know when they come into a space that there are going to be other people who really understand and relate to that experience, and they don't have to explain themselves. And of course, we want them to be in every corner of our community, but we also want to be able to say to them, we heard you, and we're making spaces that are for you as well. And so for our alumni community, which is, like someone said in the Q&A, more amorphous, but like I said, one of our greatest resources. You're not here in front of us on campus every day to serve, but we know how important community continues to be for you when you graduate. And there are so many different places that you do plug into community and find meaning. And we want to make sure that Harvard continues to be one of them. There are times that we love inviting you back onto campus for reunion and for class day. And we had a wonderful gathering at the beginning of June, and we're already starting to plan for next June's. And I have a few alumni who have reached out to me and said, I would love to help in any way. And we're already having conversations. So if someone on this call is coming up for reunion and you would like to be part of what we're planning, please reach out to me. I put my email in the Q&A, but it will also, it's on the website and it'll be on our final slide. And we are also thinking we'll be in several different cities in December, bringing alumni together, and our staff will be there to be in conversation with you around similar topics that we covered tonight. Like, what is it that makes meaning in your life? What are your concerns about campus? What's a live report from campus? How do you still want to be connected to each other and be making sure that this campus, this administration stays focused on the things that matter to you, that matter to us? And so we'd love to see you in those cities, and we'd love your help planning some of our future visits as well. So really everything that we're doing at Hillel, I hope you've heard on this call, is in conversation and in partnership with our different stakeholders, with our students, with our community partners, and with our alumni. So you can always ask us these questions, and we really want you to be part of the answers.
Okay, I'm going to bring us home here. So I want to do two things. The first is I actually want to share a set of slides for those who are Financial Times readers. These will be familiar, but just to zoom out for a minute and give you a sense of where the context we're operating in and how urgent and how promising our work is, but really how urgent. And then the second is to focus on ways you all can be involved. We heard you loud and clear in the questions about alumni engagement. Yes, and yes, and yes. As someone who met my wife at Harvard Hillel, my whole life is Harvard Jewish alumni connections. And so there's no person who is more aware of and more importantly, more infinitely grateful for the lifelong bonds of friendship and love that this place can facilitate. No pressure, Amelia. And we are really committed. We've heard you very clearly. There are going to be Hanukkah gatherings in different places around the country. I myself will be in DC and headlining one. And that'll be one of the ways that you all can contribute also by saying, hey, I'd like to get something together in my city. I would like to host if there are any Harvard students around for the summer interning. Would love to have them over to my house. Those kinds of things. We'd love to do that. Elisha set up a very exciting mentorship program, which is up and running with a score of matches already and more coming. But I do want to go back to the campus piece for a minute here, because there's something really vital that's happening that's so challenging for the youth. And I want to just share this story with pictures and quantitative things about, when you connect to Harvard Hillel, again, like what is it? What's happening? And this is an article that came by not so long ago, and you can see here the stats of what it's like here. These are self-reporting on this slide. We'll see some others. In that cohort, 16 to 39, young people, right? The reports of conscientiousness dropping, self-described, I'm a conscientious person, plummeting over the last decade. I'm neurotic, rising significantly. I'm agreeable, declining substantially. I'm extroverted. I want to be across the board declining, but again, worse for young people. Next slide. I hope the screen share is transferring with this, right? Do I make plans and follow through? Dropping precipitously. Do I persevere? Dropping. I'm easily distracted, rising. I can be careless, again, rising significantly. And this one, I'm outgoing, again, dropping, helpful to others, dropping, trusting, dropping, and I start arguments, increasing. And I want to share those slides. We can share those around. You can find them on Twitter and elsewhere. It's because there is, in some sense, there's never been a time when building community of the type we're describing, the type Amelia was describing, the type Elisha's describing, the type that formed me as a person, introduced me to the love of my life. There's never been a time when that's been more difficult. And there's also never been a time when it's more urgent, when students are thirstier for it, and when the differential impact, the benefit, the gift that Harvard Hillel can give them, the Jewish community can give students is greater. And the ways that 4 years of bringing them into dialogue with people who they'll meet, who they'll get to know more deeply maybe than they've ever known a peer. They'll come to trust more deeply than they've ever trusted someone. The way that they'll learn through experience that there are other ways to relate to people than starting arguments. And they will learn the satisfaction, the benefits of following through on projects when they see the impact on their community and the people around them. Those are the life lessons that are being learned. And we are building Jewish community through teaching those lessons. And we are teaching those lessons through building Jewish community. And I just want you to have a sense, right, that this is not just about some particular thing. It's not just about people getting a bagel in their hand. It's about actually transforming lives, enriching, deepening them, giving them skills and sensibilities and relationships that they will carry with them forever. And I just wanted to share that because I think it's easy to lose track of some of that existential depth. And now I want to get to the ways that you all can continue to be involved here. And the first one is really from being here tonight. I think being informed, bringing your questions to us, which you'll see is one of the calls to action. Staying connected is so important. We have not been able to get to all your questions. And that's by design. That's not possible in any 1 hour session. And so, follow up. And Elisha, I won't volunteer Amelia. She's got a lot of courses to take. But Elisha and I are happy to field them, and as is the rest of our staff. So I'm going to put up this slide here of some ways to get involved, to stay involved, to make a difference on campus and off throughout our community. So the top left, this is for you parents out there. I mean, parents of current students, come to Family Weekend. It's going to be great. It's a beautiful celebration. And similarly, get your student registered for Birthright. It's like a beautiful thing. Uzi, the man you see in the background there, is leading that trip. And he's a kind and wise and energetic person. Then Number 3, top right, have a question, reach out. We want you to be informed. We want you to know that there's a place to go. We want you to understand what's happening. We want to hear your concerns and even your criticisms. We are always dedicated towards being the representatives and the leadership, and also to serving this community. Our strength, our efficacy, and our sense of purpose comes from you all. And that means that we are committed to you not just supporting financially, although we need that as well, and it makes a tremendous difference in what we can do and all those things Amelia and Elisha described, but also in your understanding, you're asking questions, you're raising suggestions, and building real connections time after time after time. Bottom left, help plan your reunion and reconnect with classmates. Reunion planning is already underway for these classes, and it's never too soon to raise your hand, say, hey, I'm thinking about coming. What is there going to be? Can I help make something happen? The bottom and middle, communicate clearly with the Harvard administration, right? When you, if you get a call about making an annual donation, it's a great time to say what's happening for Jewish life. Here's what I'm hearing. What can you tell me? And even, when a Harvard leaders come to your town, their staff actually are always taking the temperature of the questions and comments they get to understand alumni concerns. So you can actually have much more influence than you might think just by raising your hand and saying, Dean Hoekstra, I want to hear about X, Y, and Z. I was asked for specifics by one person. I'll just share something Dean Hoekstra has done, which is very, very effective so far, is by requiring all the different centers at Harvard to develop a plan around viewpoint diversity and incorporating different sets of ideas, and report on that up to her to really try to end this kind of decentralized, disorganized lack of administrative engagement that allowed certain pockets to drift away from what the university can and ought to be. And the last one here, which is at least 4 or 5 of you in the questions have signaled to us, organize a Jewish alumni event in your area. Our main selection criteria about where we go, where we show up, is when we have a host who's really profoundly committed and excited and dedicated. And that could be you. So our emails are on the website. And I just want to say, you can follow us on social media. I imagine you're getting our emails if you're here tonight. This is a connection with each and every one of you that we cherish, and the connections between you all we want to facilitate, even though the webinar does not help with that. There are better ways, which are in person, in Cambridge and elsewhere. And the picture I just want to leave you with is there is something very fundamental about being Jewish, that it is intergenerational. You feel this, right? In a synagogue, you feel this in a gathering when there are babies and there are elderly in every stage of life in between. And there's something strange about college in this way, that you're radically disconnected from people who are different ages. And it's something that we actually work hard against. We build intergenerational connections. Also, 2 of our staff are expecting right now. There will be a lot of babies around Hillel this fall, and we understand that as continuing all the way through life. And so I cannot thank you enough for what we're doing. And just know that when people ask me, what is the most important outcome you care about at Harvard Hillel, I say, in 25 years, in 40 years, will our students who are on campus today be joining webinars about how their community is going, showing up, raising their hands, making suggestions, rolling up their sleeves and organizing things? Because if that's happening, we've done our job. And if not, we've fallen short. And so with that, I want to thank you all for your care, your participation, your commitment, and wishing you, our entire community, and this world a good and sweet new year. We all are due for one. And personally, one of the ways you can make it good and sweet is by continuing to show care for this community, raise your voices, and act with purpose and integrity as you have so well. So an early Shana Tova. Thank you for joining tonight. Amelia and Elisha, thank you for joining me on this call. Be well.